Welcome to ISE's FX Options Weekly Outlook, a weekly outlook on the US dollar versus the major currencies, hosted by Jason Ayres, a top industry instructor and founder of OptionSource.net. Learn to trade your views on the strength or weakness of the US dollar.
Hi there and welcome to the ISE FX Options Weekly Outlook for November 3rd to the 9th. I'm your host Jason Ayres, founder and president of OptionSource.net. As always, we're going to start with a look at our weekly US dollar index. This is a great way to gain perspective as to how the US dollar has been trading against a basket of currencies. We saw prices break above that 85 to 86 focal zone last week. We suggested that that left the window open to test new highs. We did suggest, however, that if prices were to reject out of this area, we would likely see a retest down into that 80 to 82 level. As you can see here, we did play into those higher price levels, but did move back down into the 85 to 86 zone here. With prices closing within this area, the window's now open for a retest into that 80 to 82 focal zone. Now, on the bigger picture, we still see a lot of strength in this trend. As I mentioned last week, this could very well just be the U.S. dollar taking a little bit of a breather since it's been a very significant run over the last little while. We're still looking at that 90 to 95 focal zone as being a key area of resistance should prices hold above this level. So right now this 80 to 80, 85 to 86 focal zone becomes a very important area, and we'll see how prices behave over the next week. Okay, with those bigger picture observations in mind, let's take a look at the first ISE FX options pair value from a daily perspective. This is the CDD, the US versus the Canadian dollar. We suggested that a break outside that 124 to 125 was likely to see a target of 130 to 133. We very quickly rejected off of that, played right down through that 124, 125 zone to find support in at the 119 to 121. Now, with that in mind, as you can see here, we actually have, as of Friday, broken back into that and above that 121 level there. We could conceivably look at a test of that 124 to 125 level as being a logical near-term target to the upside. Now, if prices should reject out of here and break below that 119 to 121 once again, the 115 to 117 area is our next logical target as prices move into these lower lows. So as it stands right now, we want to see how prices play within this 119 to 121. With a consolidation in here above this, it leaves a window open for a test back into the 130 level. Well, let's now take a look at the YUK, the US versus the Japanese yen. We'd suggested that 93.5 to the 94 focal zone was a very significant support level in the bigger picture. We suggested that if prices were to hold here, we'd likely see a retest back into these higher levels, which is indeed what has taken place. We're now seeing prices play within that 98 to 100, which was a previous support. That area now becomes a key area of resistance. So what we would be looking at is any sort of rejection in this area, likely playing down into this 93.5 to the 94 level once again. Should prices break above this level, the 103 to the 105 becomes the next logical target to the upside. Well, the EUI completed a measured move up into the 80.5 to the 82 focal zone before rejecting very strongly and finding support in at the 75 to 76. A quick bounce off of that led for a retest back into the above the 77 to 78 focal zone. With that in mind, the window is now open for a test back up into the 80.5 to the 82. Should we find prices play back down into the 77 to 78 focal zone, we would look for a test of that 75 to 76 area once again. Well, not surprisingly, the BPX, the US versus the British pound, rejected off of that 65 to 66 focal zone to test that 61 to 62 support level that we'd identified. Now, prices clearly broke through that to retest that 59 to 60 focal zone, where they have since bounced off and are now trading back above that 61 to 62. At this point, much like the EUI, the window's now open for a retest back into that higher level there in at the 65 to 66. However, if prices do happen to reject back into the 61 to 62, then we would look at a logical support coming in at that 59 to 60 area. Well, after a significant upside breakout, the AUX, the US versus the Australian dollar, rejected out of the 160 to the 165 focal zone to play back down into that 150 to the 152 area. Now, as you can see here, we actually broke below that and then bounced the next day back up into that significant area. We see prices closing on the lows as of Friday, which leaves the window open for a continued move down into what would be considered the next logical support area at the 139 to the 142 focal zone. If we see prices break back up above that 152 area here, then a test of the 160 to the 165 focal zone is logical. Now, one thing to keep in mind, folks, is that each of our pair values have began a natural retracement of what can be considered a very significant intermediate term move. This was most importantly facilitated by an expected rate cut. Now, it would not be improbable to see a further test of the lower support levels in the CDD, the EUI, the BPX, and the AUX, and a more more measured move higher in the YUK before any continuation of the major trends. So folks, keep all this in mind as the new trading week begins. That's all I have to say this week. This has been your ISE FX Options Weekly Outlook for November 3rd to the 9th. I am your host, Jason Ayres, founder and president of OptionsSource.net. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you here next week.
Thank you for participating in this week's session. Please join us again next week. For more information about Jason Ayres and to sign up for free FX Options trade alerts, just visit www.optionsource.net. To learn more about ISE FX Options, including our weekly webinar series, visit us at www.ise.com/fx. ISE FX Options can easily be traded through all options-enabled brokerage accounts. These exchange-listed securities are cash-settled in US dollars and have a European-style exercise.